Assalamualaikum warahmatullah. Today our discussion is on the distribution of income and wealth from an Islamic perspective, and the focus is on how to achieve the goals of distribution. If you can recall, in the previous discussion we talked about the three major goals of distribution for the Islamic economic systems. This is the broad goals that we identify. And the first goal is to guarantee the basic needs fulfillment to everyone in the economy. Number two is to achieve equitable distribution of income and wealth. And this is not similar to equal income distribution. And the third goal is to eliminate huge income gap in the economy. Please note that in the Islamic economic system, small disparity of income is allowed because that's very natural to have. What we don't want to have is to see huge income gap or disparity in the economy where the gap between the rich and the poor is so huge. The question is how to achieve these three goals. Before we proceed, remember that each of these goals, they are interrelated. Any attempt to achieve one of the goals is also part of the process to realize the other goals. So let's focus on the first goal, that is to fulfill the basic needs to everyone in the economy. We start by talking about the responsibility of individuals in the economy. From the teaching of Islam, we have the concept of fardu ain, where it is wajib for an individual to take care of himself. And this responsibility especially is more when you have a family, for a husband or for a father to take care of his family. And within this scope also, we can expand the responsibility to our close relatives, our neighbors, and it is become wajib for us to look after one another within this individual ability. And this is the first thing we should realize. The fulfillment of basic needs is on the shoulder of father, husband in the family, and he must work hard, put a lot of efforts to fulfill this responsibility. And then from that individual responsibility, we can also bring in the societal responsibilities, where it may involve the society, the community. It's also involve firms, it's also involve NGOs, where it's become fardu kifayah, collective responsibility now for members of the society to look after one another. And this is a very important concept in Islam, the concept of fardu kifayah, where it's become obligatory for that community to address certain issues, such as the basic needs fulfillment, in which when someone or a group of people look after or take care of that responsibility, the burden or the responsibility of its obligation now is lifted up from the rest. However, the concept of fardu kifayah shouldn't be viewed where you would say, let the rest do it first, then I just watch from the back. Remember the teaching of Islam, fastabiqul khairats, where Allah encourages us to race towards doing good deeds. Take the advantage. This is something considered as fardu. It offers huge reward from Allah Ta'ala, and we should be the first and excited to perform it, not to take the backbenchers attitude where we let others first, so that, when they have done it, we are lifted from that responsibility. That's the wrong attitude about this concept. So here we see the concept of fardu ain and fardu kifayah in addressing the context of basic needs fulfillment. So fardu ain and fardu kifayah, these are wajib, and it is wajib for us as individual person to look after our basic fulfillment, and also to expand that to our family is also wajib, fardu ain for the father or the husband, and then it's become fardu kifayah if we live in a society to look after one another. Beyond these two scopes, we have the sunnat or recommended acts, such as giving sadaqah or charity, waqaf, in relation to basic needs fulfillment. This is a much recommended act and is part of the teaching of our religion. Remember that the sunnah of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, even before his prophethood, Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he was known as a social activist. He helped many people. He would help orphans, travelers, and he was known to be a very honest and charitable person in the Meccan society. And we should follow this footstep of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when we say social responsibility, it is not just about individuals, it's also involved the society, where members of the society would involve firms. Firms should also participate in addressing basic needs fulfillment, such as giving donation, sponsoring, donating, and this can be considered as part of the corporate social responsibility of firms. And then we also have NGOs, non-government organizations. There are many forms of NGOs, but we are more concerned about NGOs that committed in addressing the basic needs fulfillment. After that, we can talk about the government or state responsibility. There are many ways how the government can step in addressing the basic needs fulfillment, but the government would come at a policy level. So what the government can do, for example, government can ensure basic needs fulfillment by putting some price control. There are a lot of economics debate about this effect to the market freedom, but this is quite common also for basic essentials, where government would put price ceiling or price floor depending on the objective of the price control. And then government also can provide subsidies to address certain basic needs issues, such as providing subsidy for education, for healthcare. And again, subsidies need to be introduced carefully because it may also create some other economic issues, especially in affecting market efficiency. Third, government also can introduce welfare programs related to basic needs fulfillment. Government can provide campaigns, for example, and this is also very relevant, for example, when part of the country involved in natural calamities or natural disasters, such as having a big flood coming, affecting many people. So this welfare program may be targeted to help those flood victims. This is one example. Next, there is also scheme related to public transfer payment. Government would transfer funds to those who are entitled, and this is common, such as some countries would introduce unemployment benefits, or students may receive scholarships or education assistance, or in Malaysia we have Bantuan Rakyat Satu Malaysia before, and so on and so forth. And this is the scheme that government can also do in addressing the basic needs fulfillment. After that, government also should provide excellent public goods to the society. Public goods such as public schools, public healthcare. These are essential public goods that would address basic needs of people. The next one, the government can also introduce the minimum wage policy. What is a minimum wage policy? Is it good or bad to the economy? This is where economists would have debates. If you look at this diagram, we have here, this is the demand for workers in the economy. Firms would demand workers. This is the supply of workers, where individuals, households would supply their skills and knowledge in the economy. The horizontal line would measure the level of employment, and the vertical line would measure the amount of wage. So here we have the equilibrium points, where we have here the equilibrium wage, WEQ, and over here we have the equilibrium level of employment here. Let's say the equilibrium wage is too low for people in the economy. Let's assume that it is about RM 500 ringgit per month. So those with a low skill qualification or no qualification, when they enter the job markets, most of them will get this low wage, RM 500 per month. And that's too low. So what the government will do is to introduce the minimum wage. So minimum wage is not for everyone. The minimum wage is mainly to provide some minimum wage to the low-skilled workers. Graduates like you in the future will not be entitled for the minimum wage because your university degree's salary would be much higher than the minimum wage level. So you are not under that category. So when the government introduced the minimum wage, let's say we indicate by W min, and let's say the amount is RM1,000 per month, those low-skilled workers who get the job, they will be entitled to get the minimum wage rate, RM1,000 per month. The drawback of this policy is this. You see that when the minimum wage is introduced, so we find that the supply of workers in the economy would increase. Workers would be attracted to join the job market, and therefore, the number of workers, the supply will be at N1 here. However, because the wage rate is too high, firms are no longer interested to hire many workers. So firms are only interested to hire N2 amount of workers. So the consequence of the minimum wage policy is we will have surplus of workers in the economy indicated by the difference between N1 minus N2. So when the government introduced the minimum wage policy, only those who are employed are lucky enough to get this minimum wage rate. There are many workers now become unemployed. In fact, before the introduction of the minimum wage, without the policy, the economy would hire much higher number of workers indicated by NEQ here. But with the minimum wage, now firms are hiring less. This is the drawback or the disadvantage of the minimum wage policy. So when we say the minimum wage as a strategy to fulfill the basic needs, we need to be careful about this because the minimum wage policy is like a double-edged sword. It would give benefits, it also can harm people in the economy. The minimum wage policy is especially to provide some assistance to the low-skilled workers. And the minimum wage policy may provide the basic needs fulfillment to those workers who are employed. But there are those who will be the victim of the policy where firms will not hire as much as before the policy was introduced. And the following are some criticism of the minimum wage policy. Some workers may be out of employment. Remember now, the N1 number of workers seeking for employment, but only N2 number of workers will be hired by firms. The minimum wage policy or the rate set by the government may not be sufficient to cover the basic needs. If I say 1,000 ringgit in my example, that may not be even sufficient to fulfill the basic needs of a household, for example. So this is also an issue. You can have a minimum wage, but if the rate is too low, that will not serve the purpose of basic needs fulfillment. And then minimum wage policy is also rigid to change because it takes time for the government to revise the policy. If the government has set certain amount, it may take 1 or 2 or 3 years for the government to review that rate. And within that period, inflation could go up, and that also will affect the purchasing power of workers receiving the minimum wage. And the last point about the criticism is those who benefit usually are young workers, and they are not the breadwinners in the family. Because when we say low-skilled workers, most or majority of the workers would be temporary workers, school leavers, or fresh graduates who just take the part-time jobs while waiting for the real job. They will do this type of jobs and they will get the minimum wage. And when they get the minimum wage, that money is for them to enjoy, not actually to fulfill their basic needs, because their spending purpose or objective is different. So these are among the criticism related to the minimum wage policy. So what I have discussed today is about the first goal of distribution, some strategies to achieve the basic needs fulfillment. We will continue with the other two goals, how we can achieve them. So in the meantime, please read the materials. See you next time. Wassalam.